Okay, factorizing trinomials. So let's suppose we have a quadratic trinomial of the form, say, 11x squared minus 28x plus 12. So this is a quadratic trinomial, and we're trying to factorize it. So we want it to go back to the stage of when we have the product of two binomials. So for example, this is an expansion we had earlier, where we expanded this binomial product into this quadratic trinomial. So what we're trying to do is we're going to retrace these steps and go back to the original binomial state. So we go back, yeah. As you can see here, right before we have reached our quadratic trinomial, the middle term here is in fact two terms, because of the expansion that occurred here when we expanded distributing 3x to negative 2 to 4x and 3 to 4x to negative 2. Yeah? So if we can go back from the trinomial state to the previous state by splitting the middle term, then we can factorize into the second step, and therefore factorize into the original step. Sorry, original binomial product. So here, which means that in our example here, we're trying to split the negative 28x here so that we will end up with something that looks like 12x plus mx plus nx plus 12, where mx plus nx equals to negative 28x. So that at this stage, and then we can go back up step by step. So how do we split it? This is the tricky part. Now, if you recall from our original example, notice that these two products, negative 6 and the coefficient, the m and n here, negative 6 and the negative 12, their sum, which is m plus n, yeah, it has to equal to the middle term. So the coefficient of middle term is negative 28 here. So m plus n has to be negative 28. And the product of the middle of these two numbers, as you can see here, the product negative 6 times negative 12 here is exactly the same as 12 times 6. Yes? So the product of m and n has to be the same as the product of the coefficient of x squared and the constant term. So we multiply them. We find, which is 132. So what you are looking for now are two numbers, m and n, that add up to negative 28, and we multiply them. The product is 132. So there are in fact only two numbers that will satisfy these two conditions, and I would very strongly recommend you pause the video now and try to figure out what these two numbers are. Okay, so I hope you have found out that the only two m and n are m is negative 6 and negative 22. Because negative 6 plus negative 22 equals to negative 28, and negative 6 times negative 22 equals to 132. You may ask which one has to be m and which one has to be n. Well, it doesn't really matter that much here, because we'll see very shortly. So obviously we found that m equals to negative 6, n has to be negative 22. We substitute the two numbers back into the original expression. So 11x squared minus 6x minus 22x plus 12. Well, problem. The only common factor here is x. And the common factor here is 2. Well, that's not very helpful, isn't it? Because we can't factorize very far. But all we have to do is we just have to swap the order of the middle terms. So 11x squared minus 22x minus 6x plus 12. Okay, now we have more common factors between each pair to play with. And if you can see that we have successfully reached the second last stage, and now we have to go back to the factorization. So obviously the highest common factor between 11x squared and negative 22x is 11x times what? So it's x minus 2. And similarly, the highest common factor between 6x and 12 is negative 6. So we end up with x, and 12 divided by negative 6 is 2. Here, yeah? Now we have successfully reached this stage. Well, the order is a little different because I have the term at the back, at the rear of the parentheses, but it's ultimately inconsequential. They are really the same thing. Now, and finally, the step going to back to the original. So 11x minus 6, because we're taking out the common factor of x minus 2. So we just pull x minus 2 out of the parentheses. So there is that. Well, let's try another one. Here, the next one is, let me look, yep. So next one, negative 8x squared plus 15x minus 7. Okay, now, so once again, we have to break down the middle term. So what we can do is, obviously, we have to find two numbers, m and n, where m plus n has to be the same as the middle term, which is 15. So m plus n, their sum is 15, and their product, m times n, has to be the same as the product of the coefficient of x squared and the constant term, which is negative 8 times negative 7, that's positive 56. So we are looking for two numbers. When we add them, they equal to 15. When you multiply them, they equal to 56, and of course they are 8 and 7. So m equals to 8, n equals to 7, and so that's how we break the middle term 15x down. We break it down to 8x and 7x. Negative 8x squared plus 8x plus 7x minus 7. And needless to say, you can see that the highest common factor here is negative 8x. And what we'll have left here is negative 8x squared divided by negative 8x, have x left, and yep. And once again, the highest common factor here is 7, so we have extracted the 7 from 7x minus 7, and we end up with negative 8x plus 7 times x minus 1. And if you insist on only having positive terms inside the parentheses, then we can just pull the negative 1 outside of here. And let's try another one slightly more complicated. So we have 20x squared plus 24x minus 32. Right away, you can see that there is in fact a common factor amongst them, which is, as you can see, the highest common factor between these three terms is 4. So we can directly extract 4 from them. So we end up with 5x squared plus 6x minus 8. Yep. The purpose of taking 4 is that the smaller the numbers inside the parentheses here, the less factors we'll have, and then you'll be less thinking you are required to figure out what m and n are. Now, we can just move on to the next step. So once again, the middle term is 6, so m plus n has to be 6, and m times n has to be 5 times negative 8, which is negative 40. So you're looking for two numbers. When you add them, you get 6, and when you multiply them, you get negative 40. So once again, I strongly recommend that you pause the video and try to figure out what these two numbers are yourself. Okay, so these numbers are m equals to 10 and n equals to negative 4, because 10 plus negative 4 is 6, and 10 times negative 4 is negative 40. Once again, we split the middle term here. So 5x squared plus 10x minus 4x minus 8. Which equal to 4. As you can see, the highest common factor here is 5x. So 5x x plus 2 minus, as you can see here, the highest common factor is negative 4. So and once again, we can just extract the x plus 2, x plus 2 here, the common factor. It's 2 here. X plus 2, common factor. And this is your answer.